my name is Stephanie, and I am here to tell you a little bit more about DSLR cameras and how to use them, a couple of tips of how to improve your photography overall, and how about we start with the parts in your camera. So this is a Canon 5D. This is actually from school. But it's got, your basic lens, and you zoom in, you zoom out, your focus, and then on the top here, all of this is digital, so you can see all your settings, as well as your shooting mode knob, which is right here. And what we're going to be doing is shooting in manual, so we can learn how to get the best out of our DSLR cameras. And for that, I have a friend who's going to explain to you about the exposure triangle, which is pretty much the key to improve your photography in this little bad boys.
Hi, my name is Brandon Torres. I go to San Jose State. I'm a senior and I'm doing a double major in advertising and photography. I've been doing photography since about 6-7 years. Started on high school and then I wanted to pursue it in college, and I came straight to San Jose State and started with photography as my major. My very first DSLR was a Nikon D3100. The shutter speed is essentially the way in which the shutter of the camera opens and closes to let the light go in the sensor. So essentially, when you have a faster shutter speed, what happens is the shutter will open and close very fast, per se 1/100th of a second. But if you wanted to go slower, it would open slower depending on what you wanted to do. You can do exposures up to, whatever you want. You can do it up to days if you can. But essentially, in an image, it will look like everything's blurry if the shutter speed is too slow. But on a faster shutter speed, the image will be captured and it will be more detailed, and you won't have any blur or anything like that. So the aperture, it goes back to the lens itself. It's basically how much the amount of light will go through the lens and into the sensor. So that's measured by f-stops. The lower the f-stop, the bigger the opening. The higher the f-stop, the smaller the circle. So when you have a low f-stop, let's say 2.8, you will get in a lot of light, so you will have to change some settings in your camera to compensate that. By allowing this, you also play with the aperture field, which is where you're focusing on. If you have a lower f-stop, you will have your focus point and then everything blur as it goes, because it's only focusing on that section of the photograph. If you have a bigger f-stop, per se f32, everything else will be in focus. ISO is the amount of light that your sensor can see. Essentially, a sensor, once it's hit by the light, it has a certain way to measure the amount of light that it hits. So in a regular situation like where we are right now, your sensor will say that at ISO 100 would be okay. But in case you wanted a photograph to be lighter, you can pull up the sensor, the ISO higher into 400, 800, 1600, or 3200, depending on the camera. The effect on this is that if you add more of that, ISO, it's going to add more noise, because the sensor itself is trying to replicate a pixel that it knows on the camera, therefore trying to recreate what's around it, giving you these little spots on the photograph.
Hi again. I hope that my friend Brandon's explanation helped you to understand better the exposure triangle. And just to summarize it all, we went over the parts in your DSLR camera, and we give you a couple of tips with the exposure triangle on how to manipulate the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. Thanks for tuning in. This is Stephanie with Simply Photography.